Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Vinodhini here from Hyderabad. I'm an IB educator for the past 18 years and a PYP coordinator for the past 4 years, currently as an accreditation officer, looking into the evaluation process of CIS and EASC at my school in Srinidhi International School. So today's session, Universal Design for Learning, a recent study of mine, which I would like to share with the community. So when I start working with my team of educators, I ask them this question: how can they reduce the barriers in the classroom and increase access so that all students have greater opportunities to succeed? Some questions that came out from my team. What do you mean by that? How do we do that? From where did this idea come from? Well, universal design for learning was the answer to this. Is my screen okay? Universal design for learning is the answer for this. Well, it's a framework that focuses on supporting students' success for all students with diverse learning and life needs. It's just not those, it's not an approach for those students with exceptional abilities or learning with special needs, but to address to all the students in the classroom. This concept was developed by the National Center on Universal Design for Learning and the Center for Applied and Special Technology. To know more about universal design for learning, let's go to the from where did this design originate? Well, this is from the universal design from Ronald Maz from North Carolina, who envisioned the idea in relation to architecture. The first origin of universal design started in building architectural designs. The pictures here represent several designs that incorporated accessibility. For instance, think about the ramp in front of a building. While this design element may be specifically designed or included for people in wheelchairs, but it's also really helpful for people with hard time climbing the stairs, or for parents pushing the strollers, or for travelers carrying heavy luggages. How about the automatic doors? These must be designed for people with mobility issues or motor issues, but it also caters to those with hands full of, or for people who would not like to touch the knob during the cold or flu season. Have you ever noticed the closed captions on the TV? Yes, it does meet the needs of the auditory people, but then it also helps in the most noisiest places like the restaurants or airports where you can follow what is being said on the TV. In our physical environment, we work to reduce the barriers people may encounter to access a space or an object. How can this idea be translated to a learning environment in our classroom? Universal Design Framework comes with three different principles: engagement, representation, action, and expression. The goal of UDL is to use a variety of teaching methods to remove any barriers to learning and give all students an equal opportunities to succeed. By applying UDL principles, teachers can effectively instruct a diverse group of learners. They do this in flexible ways where learners can access information and in ways students can demonstrate the knowledge. It's about building flexibility that can adjust in every student's strength and needs. That is why UDL benefits all the students in the classroom. Let us see what do these three principles talk about. Engagement. UTL encourages teachers to look for multiple ways to motivate the students, letting kids make choices and giving them assignments that feel relevant to their lives are some examples of how teachers can sustain students' interest. Other common strategies can include making skill building and creating opportunities for students to get up and move around the classrooms, representing the information in more than one format. For example, the textbooks are the primary visual source, but providing text, audio, video, and hands on learning gives all students a chance to access the material in whichever way it is best suited to their learning strengths. UDL suggests giving students more than one way to interact the material and show what they have learned. For example, student might choose pen and paper test, but it is also a good choice to give an oral presentation or do a group research. When I started sharing this information with my team, they were all like, but we already do this. It's more or less like the differentiated instructions or differentiation in the classroom. Yes, you're right. But UDL is not the same as differentiated instruction. On my slide, you will see the picture that you see is a resource taken from Georgia Department of Education. And I really like the way it was being presented. You look at the slide, and the information here presented is in 4 different languages and a picture representation, which reaches out a wider spectrum of learners or users. However, it is still not accessible to visually impaired people. So rather than planning instructions based on specific learning types, UDL provides representation in widest variety from the very beginning itself. Differentiation is still a valuable tool which should not be omitted at any cost. It is important. It is an important consideration based on the specific needs of the learners. Let me give you another example of designing a garden. Let's take UDL as a, UDL is something like designing a garden. It is about creating flexible and accessible environment from the beginning. Instead of having narrow pathways, you design a wider, smooth paths that are accessible to everyone, including those with wheelchairs or with mobility issues. You plant a variety of plants that thrive in different conditions. You may provide multiple resources to access the information about the plants through text or through pictures or through auditory means. In essence, UDL is about proactively building flexibility in the learning environment. So it's naturally accessible to a wide range of learners. In short, it is design before delivery approach. On the other hand, differentiated instructions is like adjusting care for an individual plant. Personalized care for a personal plant, like maybe it needs more extra water, so and then you water the plant. Maybe it needs more of sunshine, so you move it to a sunnier area. So it's like different catering to the needs of a person or catering to the needs of a personalized learner. So why is this universal design for learning very important in the classroom? Well, teachers all share a common goal, and the goal is to provide the best possible learning experience to the students to attain a greater academic outcome across the board. Achieving these objects is not it's not a joke. I mean, it is quite challenging, where you have a larger diverse classroom where students come from different aptitudes and learning styles. At this point of time, UDL framework helps you to identify the potential barriers in your classroom and make sure that all learners have equal opportunities to succeed. Use a variety of methods and materials in your teaching that will ensure all learners are able to engage in materials that suits them the best. It encourages students to take an active role in the classroom and become independent learners. In short, creating a learner-agentic classroom. You're giving them the urgent agency to be to take the ownership of their own learning. By implementing these principles into your classroom, you transform your classroom practices. There is no magic box or of tools and resources that you need to to design a UDL classroom. Instead, when you incorporate these principles into your classroom, you will notice there's a stronger focus on goals. Teachers and students talk about why these goals matter, how are they support how they support challenging and meaningful opportunities to them. You will see them creating their own learning goals by taking your example or taking your guidance. There's a larger focus on variabilities. In a UDL learning environment, differences in experience, knowledge, and ability are all expected. Flexible options are built into lessons for all students that allow you to use different tools or resources that support them to work towards the goal. There is a focus on barriers in the design of the environment. The focus is how to change the design of a curriculum goals or assessments or methods and materials. It is not how to fix the students. For example, you might have asked yourself, why aren't my students engaged? Whereas UTL encourages you to reframe your questions. How can the design of my lesson better engage the students? Planning a lesson with universal design learning principles, there are two major things that come out. One, not all the principles are incorporated at one go or at one in one lesson. You can use one principle at a time and see how it makes a difference. Secondly, the accommodations to offer individual student needs still remains the same. That means still the differentiation continues in your classroom. So UDL supports a diversity in the classroom by using an analysis of each student's learning profile, regardless the differences. It reduces the barriers in the classroom and prevents that prevents students in engage in learning and through flexible use of technology. The role of technology is very important and comes very handy in a UDL classroom. So these are some common myths that are um, that are about the UDL. And yeah, so that is it from my end. I hope my session on universal design for learning helps you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the session, ma'am. If you can stop sharing the screen, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So, as there are no audience for the session today, ma'am, I have prepared some questions and I will ask you the same, but most of the points are already covered by you.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of, so how can educators apply UDL principles to create inclusive learning environments that cater to diverse student needs?
Yeah, like what I said is you don't have to incorporate all the three principles at the same time, one principle at a time. Maybe you're focusing on representing the content. Instead of delivering the content at one stretch by reading out from the textbook or through a lecture method, representing that same content in a variety of ways in the classroom. Or maybe if it is like engaging the students, having one worksheet or having a video being shown in the classroom, you can design multiple resources where students are being engaged. So having one principle incorporated in your classroom, you will see the differences and every student in the class is engaged. Whether it is a student from a special need or a student as a slow learner or student who's not having a reading not able to sit for a long time and follow the lecture, he can also look into the other sources of learning the content.
Okay. So what role does technology play in supporting UDL?
Yes, technology has a major role in UDL because it provides you different tools, latest tools, the tools that can be used as an independent learner, tools that can be used for as a group task. So, and tools where like Ed Puzzle or Kahoot, where you can have for assessments or for engaging the students in learning or to deliver the content. So there are different tools used for different reasons. So tools come really handy in a UDL classroom and also helping your students get ready for the 21st century by adapting the technology.
So, ma'am, how can educators assess student learning and progress in this environment, and what types of assessments are most effective?
So assessments again, you see it differs from student to student, but then your goal is the same. So the beauty of this UDL is the goal is not being differentiated. That's the difference between a differentiated classroom instruction and the UDL. In differentiation classroom, you're differentiating the process, the product, the environment, everything is being differentiated. Whereas in a UDL approach, the goal remains the same. You're very clear with the goal. What is that you want to achieve? And then you start planning on how to achieve that. That's why we say it is a delivery before the design.
Mhm. Okay. So you have covered the myths and misconceptions part, right? So how can you address these misconceptions in the practice?
Yes, so often teachers come back and say, like, one, I already addressed like differentiated instruction, or it is for the special needs students, or it might be like, it's like a free learning. Everybody is doing their own thing. There's no control of the classroom. But then when you start designing this in your classroom and when you give them that ownership of learning, then you see the difference. Yes, initially it is a challenge, but when you start implementing these principles one at a time in your classroom, you will see how your child or how your classroom transforms and the agentic learners come out in reality.
Okay. So can UDL be integrated with other educational frameworks such as project-based learning or STEM education, ma'am?
Exactly, exactly. In all the streams. I mean, the project-based learning is nothing but again having them as a group task, giving them the choice of choosing their own projects. But then again, you're not giving them the choice on how to present the project or the kind of tools that they can use. So project-based learning or UTL all complement each other.
Ah, okay. So what is the role of student feedback and self-assessment in a UDL classroom?
Very good. I mean, here, when you ask a question like, how do you control the classroom? I mean, my teachers, when they ask, how do we control the classroom? Feedback, constant feedback is one of the strategies where you get come in handy. I mean, if you would like to have a classroom, an agentic classroom, where they take the ownership of the learning, it is also important that they take responsibility to meet the goals and you constantly give them the feedback. Feedback is a key in having a successful UGL classroom. Every moment, every time you give an immediate feedback, you don't delay the feedback. So then that is how you see how the progress of a student is visible.
So how can educators balance the need for standardized assessments with the flexibility and autonomy offered by UDL?
Okay, so standardized assessment is the end product. I mean, whereas where UDL is preparing them for that end product, you're preparing them for the world. You're preparing them on the skill-based learning. So when you have these assessments, formative assessments in the classroom, where you're giving them that ownership to meet the goal is still the same. The approach towards the goal is what is differing over here.
So how can we implement the UDL across India, all schools or each state? So what types of support systems are necessary for successful implementation of these programs, ma'am?
Yeah, so first thing is I think from the pedagogical approach, the pedagogical leaders should believe in this approach or see the difference. What difference does it make in having a UTL classroom or a traditional based classroom? You need to understand how is it different from a traditional setup as from a UDL setup. So once the pedagogical leaders of a school understand this, it's quite easier for you to have them in practice. And coming from a resources point of view, you can use the same resources that are there available within your community. Yes, and using technology is an added advantage.
Mhm. So to evaluate the effectiveness of UDL implementation, ma'am, what types of data or metrics can be used to measure the success?
To measure the success of UDL, first thing is you need to understand your classroom needs, the learner variability, and how are you achieving the goals of your classroom. So when you see the entire class achieving, working towards a goal or have achieved the goal, then I think your classroom is a successful classroom.
Mhm. So how can educators use UDL to promote self-directed learning?
Yes. So, like what I said, the three principles,
Right.
using the three principles into the classroom, one principle at a time. What is the major focus of your class for today? Is it engaging students in the content or sharing the content to the students or introducing the content to the students? What is the objective of the class? If the objective is being discussed with the students and then the resources are being shown, I mean, what resources are available for them to access the resource or for them to present the content or for them to share the understanding of the content. Working in collaboration with the students, I think that is very important in a UTL classroom.
How about teacher professional development? What are the implications of UDL?
Definitely, so it is a professional development, I would believe, because you are coming out of your traditional approach of teaching and learning practice. You're trying to meet the needs of all the students in the classroom and not focusing only on the slow learners or children with the learning disabilities, but you're meeting all both the students on high end as well as on the low end.
So coming to the challenges, ma'am, what are the some of the common challenges or barriers to implement this UDL, and how can we overcome these?
Yes, so the main challenge here is at the right time of the planning when the teacher lacks clarity on what is she focused on, what is the expectation of the classroom, her clarity on what is the lesson plan all about or what is the expectations from the students. If the clarity is not there within the teacher, I think then the planning fails because UDL is planning before the delivery. So you start your UDL approach right from the beginning and not after the lesson plan. So you're planning what is that you're expecting out of this 45-minute session. That is very important to have a clarity on that. Then only you can go ahead with your UDL framework.
Great. So great explanation, ma'am. Thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions. I know the questions were repetitive, but you have given detailed answers. So anything else you want to mention, Miss Vinodhini Mary, before we end the session?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I would love to share my expertise with the community. So thanks for the opportunity given.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll end the session now.